Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. It probably meant nothing to the Karen, but I have a lot of respect for your buddy cop sharing such a personal fact about herself to prove a point and shut the Karen down. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. You're gonna call the police? Sure, I'll wait. I'm a USMC vet and a police officer. Also, I'm currently on admin duty because I tore my quad when I failed to properly jump a fence during a foot chase, so I'm walking with a cane currently. Cast. Karen equals Karen. AM equals awesome manager. Sarah equals buddy cop. Me equals, hi, it's me. The event. I just gotten off my duty shift and decided that since the weather's going to be nice over my weekend, I'm going to get a couple of steaks, some corn, and just stuff for a cookout with a couple of my buddies. I'm looking at the steaks, comparing the cuts before I put one back when I hear it, the mating call of the wild Karen. This is a sound I'm familiar with. But she can't seriously think that I work here. I'm in a plain, logoless white polo shirt tucked into my uniform pants, midnight blue cargo pants, and my black boots. The workers here wear black button-up shirts, khaki pants, and a green apron with the store name on it. Managers tend to wear black pants but still have the apron, but with manager on the name tag. Sure enough, it was for me. Since I'd ignored it, I earned an even more stern throat clearing directed toward me, and then a shrill, "Excuse me?" I'm an a-hole, but I also think I'm hilarious. This is a horrible combination when facing a Karen. It's because of this disastrous mix of character traits that I call back to her, without a look. "Absolutely, you're excused. The bathroom's that way," with a gesture toward the sign for the restrooms, before adding, "And I'm sure they have something in the pharmacy if you need more than that." Karen, "That's no way to speak to a customer. You didn't even ask what I needed." Now, me, interrupting her, "Look, I don't care. I'm not an employee here. I have no duty to help you. I don't look anything like a staff member here. If there's nothing else, I'll be returning to my shopping." Yes, I know I was rude. I'm not going to make excuses for it. I have very little patience for these entitled morons. Karen, in full banshee shriek, "I want your manager. I'm going to..." Me, going into full knife-handling NCO Marine bellow out, "Shut your mouth. I'm a customer. I don't work here. Stop harassing me." The problem with going full devil dog when in public is the general public is not accustomed to the volume level a good yell from the diaphragm can produce. Also, the tone of voice is very hostile. The bigger problem with going full devil dog is when you're using a cane to keep you standing, it becomes very easy for you to be toppled, and this is exactly what Karen did. Fair play, Karen, fair play. She kicked my cane out from under my hand, and I was too far forward to recover and went down like a sack of potatoes. She then started hitting me with her purse. I've been hit harder by pillows wielded by my 6-year-old niece and yelling about me assaulting her and needing the police. I don't know if it was 2 minutes or 30 seconds, but it wasn't that long. It just felt like it was a bit because I was embarrassed about how easily I went down and how much it hurt my leg. But it was at this point that AM comes over and gets Karen off me and helps me up. The whole time Karen's still screaming until she remembered that she had her own phone and called 911, screaming things at me like, "I'm calling the police, you're in trouble now," and "I didn't ask for you to rape me." What? AM looked at me as confused as I was, and I just shrugged. AM, "Do you know what's going on?" Me, "Yeah, she tried to get my attention. I made a glib remark. She told me to get my manager. I dressed her down. Then as I was in the middle of unloading on her, I think she kicked my cane and I went down." You saw the rest. Karen, "Liar, you felt me up. When I pushed you off of me, you hit me with that stick, and if it wasn't for the fact that I hit you with my phone, I'd be dead." At this time, I'm pretty sure the dispatcher had said something to her as she said into the phone, "Yeah, he's about 6 foot, a large white man in a white polo and black pants with boots. We're at the..." store name and location. "Yes, I think I'm safe. The manager's here, but he seems to know my attacker. I think he wants to rape me too." No, Karen, no one wants to rape you. AM and I exchange looks before AM asks me, "It appears she called the police. Can I ask you to wait in the store?" he says to me. Me with a nod. "Sure, I'll wait." It was only a couple of minutes before Sarah, buddy cop, comes walking up. OP, what's happening here? We got a call about a sexual assault. The fact that I was addressed before Karen sent her into orbit. I could see Sarah's eyes just glaze over, and since I had trained Sarah when she joined the force, I knew this meant she'd already tuned the irate Karen out. I just looked at Sarah and said, "Take her statement. This is the manager on duty, then review the security footage." Karen, being Karen, starts with "We don't need the security footage. This man sexually assaulted me. Arrest him." And she also threw this gem out. "You're a woman and you know him. You must know what type of man he is. You can be honest that he's probably assaulted you too." Sarah looked over to the manager and said, "I think it'd help more if I were to see that footage first." It was at this point that Sarah's partner tells the Karen that we both, Karen and I, are supposed to stay with him while Sarah goes with the manager. Apparently, not only did the security camera catch everything in 1080p, but it also had audio. Sarah returned about 5 minutes later, looked at her partner, and then pointed to Karen. "Arrest her for assault and making a false report." Sarah then got into Karen's face and said, "I've been raped in the past. It's people like you that make false claims that make it so hard for us actual victims to get the help we need." And that was really the end of it. The AM helped me get the rest of my things for the grill out, and I got a nice 25% off coupon. And our next story. Entitled developer loses his profits. This isn't my story. It's something that happened to my uncle who recently passed away. My uncle was a self-made millionaire, though you wouldn't know it by looking at him. Ratty jeans, work boots, Western-style button-up shirts were his usual fare. He'd made his money buying and selling property in Florida, mostly to property developers who were putting up cheaply built, overpriced housing communities that sprung up like weeds in the 1980s. Sometime around 85, he picked up several tracts of land that had been part of a tree farm. Pine trees as far as the eye could see. He figured that he could make some money off both the trees and then parceling out the land, so after clearing one section of his land, he turned around and sold that same cleared section off to a local housing developer he knew about. I don't recall how much he made offhand, and his retelling was never clear on specifics, but easily $250K for both the land and the trees harvested. It was when the developer moved in that problems started. The developer was the type who would build these special gated communities for relatively wealthy types, not million-dollar homes, well, in any normal market, but damn close to it in price. The kind of place that upwardly mobile types would want, where they could live in the country with all the feeling of living cut off from the peasants. There were minor annoyances at first, such as the developer wanting more than a simple dirt road to lead back to where the housing development was, and my uncle having to provide an easement through one of his tracts of land, as well as having to pave it at his own expense. Then it was getting power run, which cut into his land once more, followed by having water and sewer run out there. Then there were other annoyances, like the property developer's construction crews cutting down some 20 or 30 of the trees that lined portions of his owned property and having to go to court to stop them from cutting down even more. Problems with drainage prompting the developer to cut a ditch through my uncle's property, and again ending up in court where the developer had to pay for both the trees cut and the land the ditch was on, and so on. The final straw that broke the camel's back, though, after all the relatively minor, in the grand scheme of things, annoyances, was when the developer decided to put up a gate over the easement my uncle had provided and have the workmen use a bulldozer to put an earthen berm over the dirt access road, effectively preventing my uncle from accessing the rest of his property. The developer got taken to court once more, and while he was able to keep the berm in place, due to the easement also offering access to the property, he wasn't required to remove the gate. On paper, he was supposed to allow my uncle or any of his own workmen to access the land, but that never really came to fruition. The guards would drag their heels or even threaten to call the police for someone trespassing on the land, so it became more of a hassle than anything to gain access. That's when my uncle decided he'd had enough. Well, sort of. So let me back up a bit here to make a note. The developer in question wasn't exactly what we'd consider a good person. Everything he'd been doing up to this point was on par with his past actions with other property he'd purchased. He was known for this kind of behavior, and the reasoning that he did was simple. If he annoyed the owner of the property enough or cost them enough money, then they were more likely to sell more property to him at a lower price just to get him out of their hair. What he never figured on, though, was just how petty and stubborn my uncle could be. So when I say my uncle had decided that he'd had enough, he made it clear to the developer that he would be selling the property around him. Naturally, the developer offered some lowball price for it, Imagine his shock when my uncle noted that he planned to sell it, sure, but only after he'd gotten the trees harvested. Every single pine tree that surrounded that little community, some 1,000 acres, give or take. The developer actually tried taking him to court over this, arguing that the privacy and shade those trees provided were one of the major selling points to the houses in the development. He actually tried arguing that because of that, my uncle was forbidden from harvesting them. The court decided otherwise, with the judge noting that putting a housing development in the middle of a tree farm and not expecting that someday the farm would be harvested was a really dumb idea. It took a good 3 months to harvest all the trees, all the while with that developer doing everything he could think of to try and stop it. By the end of things, you had this development stuck smack dab in the middle of a clear-cut and ruined ground with stumps, brush, and all manner of logging trash piled up. Gone was the shade, gone was the views, and gone was any of the privacy the tree farm had once offered. Prices at the development plummeted, no one wanted to live there, and those who had purchased a home there quickly sold them. The rest of the lots remained empty and overgrown. As for the developer, I don't know if he learned his lesson, though from the way my uncle would tell it, the guy certainly didn't turn a profit on the property. Well into the early 2000s, the lots were still empty and only a handful of the homes were occupied. Other, cheaper subdivisions were built surrounding that little gated community by then, which must have further driven down the property values. So there's that. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.